From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. Our main story today comes from the U.S., where outrage is continuing to grow over the treatment of detained migrants at the Mexican border. U.S. media outlet ProPublica published an audio clip of children separated from their parents at a detention center in the United States. It was leaked to the press by an anonymous source. The children in the recording are believed to be between the ages of 4 and 10. Throughout the recording, we hear them crying and pleading to a patrol agent not to separate them from their families.
¿Dónde son ustedes? ¿Y tú?
Guatemala. Papá. A mi tía para que me venga a recoger. Ay, no, y después para que llegue mi mami lo más pronto posible. No, primero con papá. Primero con papá.
Reactions to this video have been pouring in from El Salvador, where many of the migrant children begin their journey to escape violence and instability.
Inaceptable.
It's unacceptable because it hurts, not just the people involved through a violent aggression, but harms human dignity, the most essential thing we have. It's an action by the U.S. government and Donald Trump that hurts everyone's dignity. It's a crime against humanity that violates the respect of the integrity of the families.
I believe we cannot allow this to happen, and the immediate effects are already being felt in the entire American continent. The answer to this should be the whole continent together against a migration policy that does not respect a person's basic human rights.
The Mexican Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Luis Videgaray, said Tuesday that his government condemns the separation of immigrant families in the United States and considers this the result of a cruel and inhumane policy.
We have had a lot of communication with the United States. We have heard what they have said publicly, but it is not our place to clarify the reason for this policy, which is cruel and inhumane. We ask for it to be stopped, regardless of the legal or political motivation. We strongly condemned this situation.
It's with general outrage that the Mexican people has responded to the news, the videos and the audios of the kids being taken apart from their families at the Mexican-U.S. border. The three candidates for the presidency, all of them have questioned this politics by the Trump administration, and even the Mexican Chancellor Luis Videgaray has declared those measures like inhumane and cruel but the rest of the other parties, the opposition parties, have said that those measures that the Chancellor asked from the U.S. government are mild, were not enough for the level of the humanitarian crisis that is happening right now at the border.
To learn more about the migrant detention centers, we are joined by Dr. Evelyn Encalada, a co-founder and organizer with Justice for Migrant Workers that is based in Canada and Mexico. Hello, Evelyn. Thank you for joining us.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
So what was your reaction to the images of migrants being held in cages and children pleading to be returned to their families?
I was completely horrified to see those images. It's completely unconscionable to see that in 2018. At the same time, it made me think about the disdain and discrimination that many of us Latin Americans have faced by the U.S. government for many decades at the same time. It also made me think about what stories exactly that we don't know about that have yet to be uncovered. Every single day now, we are hearing different stories of abuse coming from children, and there's much more that we need to know, and there's much more that needs to be organized. But overall, I just saw this as state violence that has had many faces throughout many decades throughout the region with our relationship to the United States and the way that also the problems that people are fleeing from, children, their mothers and their fathers from Central America, and as far as also Brazil, a lot of them are US-made problems, with the United States interfering in Latin America for several decades and aborting many social reforms that people are just having to escape from right now.
So is this a new practice for the United States, or has this been going on since before this administration?
Oh, definitely. It's been set up by the Obama administration. Basically, all of this infrastructure of deportation was set up during the Obama years. And all of these for-profit interests have also involved themselves in the further criminalization and incarceration of migrants, refugees, to make money out of people's desperation to survive.
It seems we are losing contact with Evelyn. We'll see if we can get her back so she can comment on this very important topic. Let's go to another story. Iván Duque will be the successor of President Juan Manuel Santos in Colombia. Social sectors, armed conflict victims, and human rights defenders have expressed their concerns about him, who for them represents the interests of the big economic sectors.
Scholars and analysts are reflecting on the victory of right-wing candidate Iván Duque as the elected president of Colombia, after he received 58.98% of the vote. Meanwhile, the opposition leader Gustavo Petro received 41.81% of votes.
This means that the coalition reaction has triumphed and the right wing has open support and covering a very important part of the political center of the liberalism sector.
Elected senators have rejected the arrival of Iván Duque to power and have criticized his record with regards to his social and economic policies.
What they have achieved is to position the power, to join all the economic forces that don't want to be taking privileges in this country. There is no social mobility of the lower classes.
Victims of the armed conflict are raising their concerns. For them, the Democratic Center politician represents the continuity of former President Álvaro Uribe Vélez, especially when it comes to human rights violations.
They didn't think consciously. The sadness and pain that the country has with thousands of violent acts like raping women and children, over 65,000 missing, torture, genocide, recruiting minors, kidnappings, human trafficking, and they didn't think. We want to tell them that sadly, it is the first country that votes for the continuity of war.
Rural communities have fought for an agricultural reform in defense of their lands and for the peace agreement implementation. That's why, despite the government programs submitted by Iván Duque, they will continue to fight for their rights.
If we have to continue on the defense and the peace agreement implementation, it's because it is important for our land and our people, so no more people are killed. This is one of the most important things of the peace agreement.
The inauguration of President-elect Iván Duque will be held on August 7th.
So now we can go back to Evelyn Encalada. We had a small problem, but we'll continue talking about the migrant detention centers in the United States. Hello, Evelyn.
Yes, so what I was trying to say is that all of this started with the Obama administration, wherein a deportation machine was constructed, for the criminalization of refugees from Central America and beyond, and for profit making. All of these private prison companies also started getting involved and lobbying government to move in this direction. So now refugees are fitting really well into the prison industrial complex in the United States. So this should not be surprising to any of us. And we also have to look at how children have been used by the state in the United States, starting also with a residential school system in the US where indigenous children were taken from their families. So this is has to be seen in historical perspective as well. And now there's a lot of organizing against this because people all over the world are starting to wake up to see how we have a crisis unfolding within the United States, a country that purports all over the world, and promoting a certain way of thinking about human rights when that in itself is not followed within their own borders in the United States.
So what can be done to stop this? Can we turn to any organizations in the US or in several Latin American countries to stop these migrant detention centers and these children being separated from their families?
Yes, well, the first thing I would say is to organize demonstrations outside of U.S. Consulate offices, U.S. embassies all over the world, which has already begun, and have fundraisers to support the work of the American Civil Liberties Unions, to pay for legal fees, to support children and their families, and to lobby our own government all over the world to force the United States to respond to very basic international human rights protocols that are all being violated right now, because we cannot at this moment really quantify and really assess the damage that is being done to these children. The damage that they are being inflicted with is going to be lifelong. So there's nothing that could really help them recover from this. So we have to deter and the damage as much as possible, and organize across the world to denounce this, because also the United States has not signed on to basic international human rights conventions like the rights of children. And so we have to hold the United States accountable.
Thank you very much, Evelyn. That was Evelyn Encalada from Justice for Migrant Workers.
Thank you.
So we'll take a short break now, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. So it's been another emotional day for the teams competing at the World Cup in Russia. Let's go to Jose Daniel Lopez, who has all the information.
Thank you, Carla, and welcome to our Telesur Russia 2018 special World Cup coverage. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez, and here are today's headlines. We start with the results from today's matches. In Group H, Japan beat Colombia 2-1 in the City of Saranx. Carlos Sanchez got a red card during the first 3 minutes, giving Shinji Kagawa the chance to score a penalty goal for Japan. Colombia matched the score with a goal by Juan Fernando Quintero, but Yuyo Sako from Japan came back with the final goal of the game at the 73rd minute for the victory. Colombia's head coach, Jose Pekerman, said that the outcome was not what they expected, but the team was able to rise to the occasion.
We were expecting something completely different. We were hoping to start with a victory. The positive side of all of this is that you can see that the team managed to rise to the occasion and we managed to get a draw even though we lost one of our most important players.
From the start, I think we could be very aggressive, and of course we had the advantage of more players. However, what I said at halftime is it's not just the number of players, but we have to be better than them with positioning.
Senegal defeated Poland 2-1 in Moscow. One of those Senegal goals was from Polish defender Sionek, who scored an own goal, followed by a goal by Mbaye Niang in the second half for the win. Now let's take a look at the reactions from fans at today's match.
I am very happy to know that my country has already passed a small step and now we see what will come next, and we would really like to go till the end.
It was a very interesting game. This is the first victory for an African team, so it's not only a victory for Senegal, but also for all of Africa. And I am very proud to be from Senegal and from Africa. I think all the other games will be the same and we will win.
And in today's final game, Russia beat Egypt 3-1 in St. Petersburg. Egyptian defender Ahmed Fathi scored an own goal in the second half, and Denis Cheryshev and Artem Syuba sealed the victory for Russia. In Mukuru wa Jenga, one of the biggest neighborhoods in Nairobi, Kenya, the women's football team, Mukuru Talent, is giving girls a chance for a better life.
Sometimes when I feel I'm very down, I get up, go to the pitch, things change.
I stopped smoking. Before I used to sleep anywhere where I found food.
I did
not have enough money to take me to college. If you sponsor us or give us place to live or something to eat, will make us healthier.
Mukuru Talent is more than a football school. It's a company wanting to change the life of this community. It's been around for 7 years and it manages a school of 80 students. They also collect garbage in Mukuru kwa Njenga, a neighborhood excluded of water and electricity, where unemployment put at risk the life of their citizens. The Mukuru Talent was launched by Omandia Amos, a carpenter that hosts more than a dozen of players in his own home.
If I get something, I'm trying to look how those ladies camping here, how they can get their daily food. Sometimes you can get and sometimes you cannot get.
In Kenya, we find a job, it's so difficult.
At least we are still together, to think that what we do will serve us to be better in life. Football is a business.
I have a talent, and this talent will not let me down.
They train every day to go from First Division to Premier, but it is a big risk. They lack the necessary equipment, and sometimes they can't even afford their own bus ticket.
I was taking drugs some days back, and I had a gang by then.
Now they know what they want, and when they achieve good results in football, little by little they widen their horizon of aspirations. The idea is to create, through football, a place where they can help the girls empower themselves. The goalkeeper of the team used to be a thief. She was member of a gang where the majority of their members have already died, and now they are trying to change their lives.
At least we sat together and talked about it.
And we talked.
Right now, they make a living out of washing clothes and sweeping houses. Their daily meal depends on the $2 they make daily. This is why they need education and resources to improve their lives.
Since I joined Mukuru Talent, it's like I reformed from what I was doing, those bad things.
I had to stop studying because I had no one.
I had to be an accountant.
They have great aspirations because they live in an environment flooded with poverty, and those trophies have the potential to change their lives. They played in the Urban League since 2014 and won it in 2017 to go to First Division. They love football. The defenders love to play because they too defend themselves in their life.
Now let's take a look at the group points. Japan and Senegal share the top position in Group H with 3 points each. Colombia and Poland sit at the bottom with 0 points. Russia steals the top position of Group A with 6 points. Uruguay is in second position with 3 points. Egypt and Saudi Arabia are in the bottom with 0 points. Tomorrow, Cristiano Ronaldo and Portugal will play against Morocco. Uruguay will face Saudi Arabia in St. Petersburg. And Spain will try to obtain their first victory against Iran. And that's all for today's Telesur Russia 2018 headlines. Don't miss our exclusive show, De la Mano del 10, the World Cup according to Maradona. Only on Telesur English. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Back to you, Carla.
Thank you very much, Jose Daniel. Moving along, 10 months after the last teachers' strike was suspended in Peru, teachers have returned to the streets to demand that President Martín Vizcarra reforms the education system. They believe that the sector is in crisis due to a poor education budget considered to be the lowest in Latin America. The teachers are also asking for greater social investment in poverty zones, where the academic performance of students is compromised due to malnutrition and anemia. Controversy is mounting in Mexico after the government removed the legal veto that bans companies from privatizing and extracting water from over 300 watersheds in the country. The concession could mean the privatization of 55% of Mexico's surface water in favor of transnational companies. Social movements denounced that President Enrique Peña Nieto's decree is aimed at transforming basic common goods into a commodity. The new rule also allows companies to extract water and use it for fracking. In Nicaragua, the national dialogue is on hold as opposition groups are demanding President Daniel Ortega invites the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights and the European Union to oversee the talks. Official numbers have been released by the Truth, Justice and Peace Commission detailing 173 deaths, which have occurred since the beginning of the anti-government protest on April 19. The majority of the deaths have been in the department of Managua, where 95 people have been killed due to the violence. The Truth, Justice and Peace Commission condemned the violence that has been carried out by groups of vandals. In different documents released on Tuesday, the Commission denounced kidnappings, fires and attacks on citizens.
We, as a student movement, are convinced that the dialogue is the only way towards peace. Yesterday, we could not advance, it is unfortunate. All Nicaraguans are very united so that we can find a solution. Nicaraguans are very concerned. No one feels protected in their own home.
Continuing in Nicaragua, U.S. journalist Max Blumenthal has just published an in-depth look at U.S. interference in Nicaragua, particularly a recent meeting between Nicaraguan student opposition leaders and right-wing conservative figures in Washington. We are now joined by Max. Hello.
Great to be with you.
So Max, can you tell us more about this meeting between the so-called student leaders and conservative figures in Washington? Who were the main players?
Well, 4 student leaders from Managua were brought to Washington by Freedom House, which is actually an arm of the U.S. government that traditionally aligns with neoconservative interests. It supported war and regime change in Iran, for example, and around the world has advanced regime change. And it bankrolled these students' trip to Washington to meet with the head of USAID, which is an arm of the State Department, which has committed millions of dollars into funding regime change against socialist-oriented governments, including the government of Nicaragua and Venezuela, as well as Cuba. They also met with 3 of the most right-wing, hawkish members of Congress, Ileana Ros-Lehtinen in the House and Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz in the Senate, and posed for photographs. And this really revealed what the agenda of these students is and how closely controlled it is by Washington. Back in Managua, another student leader, Harley Morales, spoke to a Salvadoran journalist from the newspaper El Faro and commented that it was a disgrace that these students had met with right-wing Republicans, that it basically played into Daniel Ortega's narrative that he was facing a right-wing outside plot. And they needed a course correction, but this same student leader, Harley Morales, conceded that at this point, all the student groups are closely controlled by business interests, by, in his words, movers and shakers, sons of politicians, and that they have one political line, which is to promote a pro-Washington agenda. So we clearly see from these students' trip to Washington that Washington is the guiding hand behind these anti-Ortega protests.
And talking about the Washington agenda, for our viewers who perhaps don't know the full story about the U.S. interference in Nicaragua, can you take us through how this has played out over the years?
Well, the National Endowment for Democracy, which was founded in 1983, is the key U.S. arm of soft power, especially for promoting regime change in socialist countries. The National Endowment for Democracy's first major success was in replacing the Sandinista government in 1990 with the right-wing government of Violeta Chamorro, partly by pumping millions of dollars into La Prensa, which is the main right-wing newspaper in Managua, also owned by the Chamorro family. And it's agitating very much right now for regime change. From 2014 to 2017, as I explained in my article at thegrayzoneproject.com, the National Endowment for Democracy has funded Nicaraguan media and civil society groups to the tune of $4.1 million. And these are the groups that activated the insurrection against Daniel Ortega and the Sandinista government. And when I say the term insurrection, I'm not using that lightly. In fact, a media outlet funded by the National Endowment for Democracy called Global Americans recently took credit for, in their words, laying the groundwork for insurrection. They later changed the headline to the softer, laying the groundwork for change. But the National Endowment for Democracy is itself taking credit for inspiring the unrest in Nicaragua, which has led to violence that has left over 100 people dead. It seems to be extremely irresponsible. And American taxpayers don't know that their money is being directed into these kinds of activities.
Thank you very much, Max, for your time.
Thanks for having me.
That was Max Blumenthal talking about the situation in Nicaragua. Let's move to another story. It's been 6 years since WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange was given refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. 46-year-old Assange entered the embassy evading arrest over sexual assault charges by the Swedish government, which were later dropped. But the software programmer still faces espionage charges and a criminal investigation by the US government over the release of thousands of classified documents related to the government and the army. He could face extradition to the US if he steps out of the Ecuadorian embassy in the UK. And with that story, we come to the end of this news brief. But there's another ones you can find on our website, telesurtv.net/English. And be sure to follow us also on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.
Enjoy our programming from Monday to Friday, where you'll find the best information on innovation, conservation, human well-being, and human rights. Keep up to date on the latest innovations in science and technology with At the Moon. The habits and knowledge you need to live a healthy lifestyle are on Guide Your Body. Environmental consciousness is required to preserve our Earth. Undergo your transformation on Green Zone. We defend the struggles of peoples in resistance fighting for their rights. Between Borders. All about equity, diversity, and respect for identity on By Gender. Every day we feature a wide variety of content. Only on Telesur, the news source from Latin America and the Caribbean. A sign of resistance to hatred and injustice, Bill Fletcher Jr. conducts a discussion and analysis space to reveal the social struggles of Black people on The Global Africa. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.